Peace, and welcome to another episode of the Quranic Remedies, where we spend about 15 minutes exploring a page from the Quran together and seeing how we can apply the verses to our lives. And hopefully, with God's permission, it helps us heal our brain, body, mind, and soul. So today we'll be reading from chapter 6, the Livestock, from verses 82 to 90. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge to God from the accursed devil. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful. الذين آمنوا ولم يلبسوا إيمانهم بظلم أولئك لهم الأمن وهم مهتدون. Those who believe and do not obscure their faith with wrongdoing, those will have security and they are guided. وتلك حجتنا آتيناها إبراهيم على قومه نرفع درجات من نشاء إن ربك حكيم عليم. That was our argument which we gave to Abraham against his people. We elevate by degrees whomever we will. Your Lord is wise and informed. ووهبنا له إسحاق ويعقوب كلا هدينا ونوحا هدينا من قبل ومن ذريته داود وسليمان وأيوب ويوسف وموسى وهارون وكذلك نجزي المحسنين. And we gave him Isaac and Jacob. Each of them we guided, and we guided Noah previously, and from his descendants David and Solomon and Job and Joseph and Moses and Aaron. Thus we reward the righteous. وزكريا ويحيى وعيسى وإلياس كل من الصالحين. And Zechariah and John and Jesus and Elias, every one of them was of the upright. وإسماعيل واليسع ويونس ولوطا وكلا فضلنا على العالمين. And Ismail and Elijah and Jonah and Lot, we favored each one of them over all other people. ومن آبائهم وذرياتهم وإخوانهم واجتبيناهم وهديناهم إلى صراط مستقيم. And of their ancestors and their descendants and their siblings, we chose them and guided them to a straight path. ذلك هدى الله يهدي به من يشاء من عباده ولو أشركوا لحبط عنهم ما كانوا يعملون. Such is God's guidance. He guides with it whomever He wills of His servants. Had they associated, their deeds would have gone in vain. أولئك الذين آتيناهم الكتاب والحكم والنبوة فإن يكفر بها هؤلاء فقد وكلنا بها قوما ليسوا بها بكافرين. Those are they to whom we gave the book, wisdom, and prophethood. If these rejected them, we have entrusted them to others who do not reject them. أولئك الذين هدى الله فبهداهم اقتده قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إن هو إلا ذكرى للعالمين. Those are they whom God has guided, so follow their guidance. Say, I ask of you no compensation for it. It is just a reminder for all mankind. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. God the Great said the truth. The verses are a summarization on what God is teaching us in the story that He has just presented to us in the last page about Abraham, who Abraham went and was seeking for his monotheistic Lord, his monotheistic deity, which he ended up finding the Lord of the worlds who created everything. And God has given him a way so that he would be able to debate his people. The way was going through with what these individuals were worshipping, and he was looking for the light in the darkness. When he saw the star, he said, or the planet or / star, he said that is my Lord. And then when it set, he said that I don't like those that set. And then it's the same thing that happened with the moon, even though the moon was a little bigger. And then after the moon has set, he's seen the sun, and he said the sun is the biggest and bigger, and therefore I'm going to worship the sun, or the sun is my Lord. And then when the sun disappeared, he has wholeheartedly submitted. He was showing to these people, his own people, the simple argument is those things that you worship, they cannot withstand time. They either disappear or they don't answer your call, nor can they protect themselves, nor are they dictating their own movement or what they need to do or what they shouldn't do. So it's not possible for something to be God if it has bindings or it's showing its limitations, which these rocks obviously do. So Abraham was given a huge, strong proof and an argument against his people. But there's also something that we have to realize. The reason why Abraham was susceptible to be guided and his heart was pure enough for him to understand the message and look for the message and look for God is because God is telling us here that Abraham was looking for the guidance and he wanted to find that security. And those that are believing and they're not falling into certain traps, nor are they dressing their faith with falsehood or disbelief, these are the people who find security and they find guidance. Guidance, yes, is understanding that there's one God and this deity we have to submit to, and then there's a day of judgment. but the true guidance also falls into the decisions that you make from day to day. If you are unable to make the correct decisions and you find yourself constantly in trouble, or that people are not accepting you, just you as a person, not even as a believer, then you are not making the right decisions, and your psychology and the way that you approach matters is not of an efficient way that the human being should be living, and therefore it is not acceptable by your society or even the nature or the environment that you're in. And more importantly, it's possibly not accepted by your Lord or your God, and therefore you keep getting tested. Now, God is telling us those that are not doing these wrongful deeds and they're not dirtying their faith with wrongdoings, they have the security. Now, the interesting part here is the word amn, security, is in the same root as iman, which is faith, because people have security in what they believe in. And if you're believing in God, and God is the Lord of the worlds and He is in control of everything, you're surely held on to the strongest rope that is available. While all these people, they're holding on to these objects and to these things, and this is where they're putting their faith and security in, and it falls quickly apart. Now, God also tells us about the messengers, this is in chapter 27, that if they have oppressed, or they have oppressed themselves or oppressed somebody, then they're going to start to find some fear. Because God says that the messengers, they do not fear in the presence of God, or they do not fear with God, except those that have committed an oppression. And if they correct themselves, then they are no longer in fear. This verse in verse number 82 mirrors that idea, that those people that are understanding the message of God, they are capable of staying in that sense of security, that sense of peace, that sense of guidance, because they're not turning away from God. They are staying at that level that God has put him. And we've already discussed that God, in His wisdom, was giving Abraham the argument. And then after that, God is expressing to us, because of how much of a good person and kind-hearted Abraham was, and how he was constantly turning to God and witnessing to God and witnessing for God, we see that God has given him the blessings of Isaac and Jacob. And God is saying that both of them were also guided. Here we are clearly realizing that Isaac, which we are told is the son of Abraham, here's the first seed of Abraham in a certain sense, and Jacob is now the seed of Isaac, and God is showing us how his seed is continuing. And then this is something that's awesome about the Quran, where this is where these similar verses can come in play, and you can see that there's many ways of interpreting what the verse is saying, but the people of guidance, they believe that it's all the truth from the Lord, and God is going to clearly He's going to tell us its interpretation on the day its interpretation is going to come, which is on the day of judgment. Now notice how God talked about Abraham, and then He said we gave him Isaac and Jacob, and He guided both of them, and we guided Noah previously. So this is before Abraham. And then this is where the interesting part is written, and it says, from his descendants, David and Solomon and Job and Joseph and Moses and Aaron. One can understand when the word his is used here that David, Solomon, Job, Joseph, Moses, and Aaron are the descendants of Noah. Or one can say that his descendants is still pertaining to Abraham, and he's actually saying that they are the descendants of Abraham. But the cool part here, especially about the verse, the both of them are true. But where one can get deluded is where they start to assume that David is the direct descendant of Noah, or i.e. he came around right after where Noah came, and it can be in between Abraham or at the same time as Abraham, and not say that David is also a seed of Abraham. And this is where these similar verses can cause people with deviation to go off course. Here it's very clear that David, Solomon, Job, Joseph, Moses, and Aaron are from the children of Jacob, or the seeds of Israel, the descendants of Jacob. And we know now that Jacob is also the descendant of Abraham, which we are seeing that the benefit of what Abraham has in his children is ongoing and carried on, and his seed multiplied drastically when there was a point where he did not have any children, where he had no seed. So his ability to give to God after his passing away was very limited. It's just because a son and a seed is something that helps you in your purpose. When Abraham is making his supplications to God, it is also applying to his children, and therefore he's getting benefits, and because he interceded for these children before these children ever existed. And God is telling us that these people, they were guided because they were righteous. This is something that we have to understand, The people who are not righteous, the people who are severe in the way that they approach matters, and the people that are disbelievers, they're not going to find that guidance. God is telling us these individuals, and he lists some more like Zechariah, John, Jesus, and Elias, which these are very specific in why God is sending this group on its own, with Zechariah and John being father and son, Jesus and Elias being very close in the nature of how they preached and in the way that they were approaching matters. This is a very specific group from the children of Israel as well, where God is telling us that they were upright. So now we know that righteous people and upright people, they were given the prophethood, the book, and the ability to, the prophethood, the wisdom, and the book. And God is also going as far as telling us about Ishmael, Elijah, Jonah, and Lot, also favored one of them over all other people. Now, this is where God is showing us that these are people who have been very favored. And it was not just random. It's because of something that's internally in these people. It makes them worthy of this guidance. And this is where we have to understand that this is not just something that is random, where God is just picking people in random and making them prophets. It's people who God knew internally they were capable of doing it. But there is something that we also have to keep in mind, that these individuals, along with everyone else that God has guided by the favor of God, that they are not free of sin, that they are not infallible human beings. God is saying to you clearly that if they decided to associate, if they decided to go away from what God has told them to do and what they needed to do, at that point they would have dressed their faith with wrongdoings. They would have accepted falsehood, which God has said not to accept, and they would have said lies about God, and then God is telling us that their deeds would have gone in vain. It would have fell off them, everything good that they have done, and therefore it feels like therefore they become worthless human beings in the eyes of God. But of course, the door of repentance is open, and people changing their ways and accepting their mistakes and crying to God and praying to God and begging to God to come back to what they had. This is something that's also understand in the Quran. I'm not saying that these people, these very blessed people and these very honorable people have done such a thing where they associated with God, but if anybody in the world does, there's still a door to come back to God. And God's mercy is so encompassing that it's something that is not difficult for you to realize. But the people who give up on God's mercy, those are the ones who are truly, truly deluded and oppressed. And yes, God has told us about not only the prophets, but there were other messengers and other prophets that came by that were not listed to us. And God did guide them to the straight path. Now, this is where God is telling us something that is very important. God is not relying on these people. God is not waiting for these people to finish their task or their job. It's not like they are the ones who are gatekeeping when God is going to send someone or not send someone. God is free of any of that. God is clearly telling us that if these individuals that were given these great blessings of prophethood, the book, the wisdom, that if they rejected it, God has already assigned other people to fulfill the message. God sends these prophets, these messengers, so that the people on the day of judgment, they have no excuses if they're going to hell, that they didn't know or they haven't heard. There's plenty of people that came in history reminding people of God and of the meeting of God on the day of judgment, and that death is inevitable. This is something that is always talked about in history. And there's nobody on this earth that hasn't heard of the idea of God, possibly the day of judgment, and that they need to be good people. Even if you are a man by yourself on your island, there are things that you realize about yourself and what's going on around you in the environment that you're in, that there's things that are efficient and there's things that are inefficient. And you yourself, you have this drive to serve something or serve someone, or have these vices and these addictions. Some people are addicted to the servitude of God, and some people are addicted to following their desires on this world. Now, there is something that's very interesting. God is telling the blessed prophet Muhammad here that to follow their guidance. So we can see that their guidance is universal. It's one set standard on how to approach the matters when it comes down to the religion of God. They were all on the straight path, and the path might look different from one person to the other, but it's literally the exact same path, and therefore you should take this path. And God is ordering the Prophet Muhammad that because these people were guided, so follow their guidance. And now one can ask, where do you find those individuals' guidance? Well, many of those people that God has listed, their stories are present to us in the Quran, where there are specific stories that we can learn from, and how they were guided to certain things and how they were guided to certain conclusions, from Noah to Abraham to Solomon to David to Job to Elias to Jesus to Zechariah to John to many other individuals that have been listed by name as prophets or messengers in the Quran. There's a lot to learn from. Again, you have the story of Joseph and Isaac and many other things that have been presented to you in this amazing book. So when he wants to also find the guidance of Muhammad and follow the guidance of Muhammad, we do not need to look very far, because here right now he himself is being guided. And in that guidance that he's reading, he is being told to follow the guidance of these individuals that God has listed. And now he's making something very clear to us. God is telling us to say, just like how the prophet was ordered to say, that I'm not asking any money for you from these messages, from what you are learning. I do not need a compensation, because it is a reminder for you, because this is something that is going to be very pressing for you after you pass away. This is something that is extremely clear and understandable. This is the message, is that you are going to stand a day where whatever's in this world right now, whatever money I could make or whatever money you could make selling the word of God, it's not going to matter for you very long, because on the day of judgment, you're going to reject it all and everything that's on the earth, just for a chance for you to get to heaven, where the building truly starts, where you are capable of serving your Lord wholeheartedly and not have to worry about these tests and trials that are either done by these people around you who wants to disbelieve, and they don't want to find the security and guidance, and they rather buy into this worldly life. And you are possibly tested by God to truly see who you are so that you could improve yourself. I wonder how it would be in the day of judgment if you do make it to heaven and you find the mercy of God. What other than bliss are you going to find on the day of judgment? What in heaven, the paradise that God has promised us? So now we just have to endure, understand that it's not just about what we are gaining, because the guidance is worth a lot more than whatever these people are building or whatever these people are collecting. So let's take this time to reflect on if we are dressing our faith or we are obscuring our faith with wrongdoings, and maybe we're not feeling as secure, and maybe we have some certain doubts, and maybe we're not finding the full guidance. So there are certain things that we might need to repent personally, and we should maybe look for those and get that done so that God will be happy with us, and so we can find that security and guidance. And with that said, I hope you guys are enjoying these. All praise to God, the Lord of the worlds, and peace be upon you.